So
Here's the BBB&JOEB and the BBB, baby, BBB&JOEB, rock, cock, and Joe rally. BBB&JOEB, and the BBB, baby, BBB&JOEB, rock, cock, and Joe rally. We're coming in, only seeking the truth about JFK. It's a long-coming podcast crew. Tell 'em, Joe, here we go.
and here we go, I guess.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is episode number 349, Gunrunners and Tramps. This evening, we will be diving into a little bit about ATF agent Frank Ellsworth and John Franklin Elrod, and some other folks that he was in jail with in Dallas at the time. Before we get there, Joe, let's welcome in some of our peeps.
Yes, good evening. Let's do it. Why don't you do that?
All right, we got Scott up in the house. Hello, Scott. Tiny is up in here. The double B. Brandon, what's up, buddy?
Double B.
Let's see. Yeah, Trey, Shreveport Trey in the house. What's up, Trey? Rocket Queen Colleen is here. Hello, Colleen.
Hope you are feeling better, Colleen.
Oh, Garden and Guns up in the house. Been a while.
Oh, yeah.
Randy Brooks back in the house. What's up, brother? Social Outcast is here. Our boy Lee Harold Oswald. Roger Maynard, our music man, is up in the house. What's up, buddy?
Roger.
I think that's everybody that we can see anyway. I'm sure there's more lurking in the background. Don't be shy, folks. Say hi. How you doing? How the hell are you? It's Friday night. We came to rock out with our what's out. And for those who came to the all members show this past Wednesday, because remember, the last Wednesday of the month is available to all members, including Spooks. We kind of discussed how we were going to try to make the shows a little shorter because, we understand that two plus hours of a show is a little ridiculous. But, it's a weird topic. You get to talking and all of a sudden, I mean, Joe, shit, we're 2.5 hours into something and it feels like we just started,
It really does. I look at the clock and I'm like, whoa. And that's because we have fun and we love bullshitting with everyone. And talking about a topic we are all passionate of.
Sally, hello, welcome in, Sally. All right, Joe, well, on that note, without further ado, let's jump right into the show, shall we?
Let's do it. Do you want me to start with Ellsworth?
Yeah.
Okay. I had something come up and I joined as the intro was starting. So Rob and I did not discuss that. But Frank
I mentioned it in a message earlier. You may or may not have listened to. I don't know.
Yes, I did. So Frank Ellsworth, probably not a very common name in the assassination, but once I get done describing his shenanigans and almost Westbrook type movements on the 22nd, I think this name will be very interesting to you guys. So essentially, Frank Ellsworth was an agent for the IRS Division of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Tax. It was called the ATT. But now it is known as the ATF. That was the precursor. And he was an undercover agent, and he was buying guns from people that were running guns. One of his, let me bring this up. One of the guys he was investigating and buying guns from was a local Dallas guy named John Thomas Mason. And he is interesting because this ATF agent, Frank Ellsworth, alleged to the HSCA that Mason was responsible for some of the Oswald sightings as a Oswald double. So I actually found a picture of him, Rob. And let me bring this up. So John Thomas Mason, and I am now going to read from Someone Would Have Talked by Larry Hancock. John Thomas Mason, one of the more interesting gun dealers in Dallas, was rumored to be connected to the Minuteman as a weapon source for right-wing buyers of many sorts. He was suspected of reworking semi-automatic weapons for full automatic firing and of trafficking in controlled explosives. Because of these reports, ATF agent Frank Ellsworth began an investigation of Mason, in which Ellsworth and another ATF agent eventually, undercover, placed a purchase with Mason for a number of automatic weapons, supposedly a right-wing buyer in New Mexico. And so John Mason was arrested on November 20th, Rob, 2 days before the assassination, for the possession of dynamite. He was out on bail the next day, but would be back in jail after they kind of revoked his bail on the 22nd. And
it's a bad day to get arrested in Dallas.
It is, as I'm sure you'll get into. So the initial charges against Mason had been the federal offense of trafficking in controlled materials, explosives, and his release on bail. I guess he got released on federal bail, but then the local Texas charges placed him, rearrested him 2 days later. And ATF agent Ellsworth described Mason as a virtual look-alike for Lee Harvey Oswald. And I want to get your thoughts. I see a resemblance. There's not many pictures of him out there.
Yeah, I see a faint resemblance. I mean, anybody who was young, dark hair, receding hairline, weighing $165, clean cut, no facial hair, brunette, is gonna kind of look like Oswald. You know what I mean?
Right.
A lot of these guys wore the same kind of haircut back then. I mean, does this guy look like Larry Crayford? Does this guy look like Michael Payne? Does this guy look like Lee Oswald? And so on and so forth and so on and so forth. But yeah. I mean, kind of. Yeah, I wouldn't say he's a dead ringer, but yeah.
Right. Well, Ellsworth thought he was a dead ringer, and that's what he told the HSCA. So we will get into some of those documents in a second. But so you have this guy Mason, a right-wing gunsmith. He's supplying arms to Manuel Rodriguez, the leader of the local Dallas Alpha 66 branch, and he's connected to the Harlandale House, Rob. And so was Mason an Oswald double, and why did Ellsworth think so? The claim that Mason resembled Oswald came from Frank Ellsworth. He was adamant that they were almost identical. Obviously, to a certain degree, such things are open to interpretation. Ellsworth, the problem with his documents, Rob, is he talked to the Warren Commission off the record. He talked to the HSCA, and that interview is not available. And we'll get into some of the AARB's efforts to try to get those. But he did talk to author Dick Russell, and that's where we get a lot of this from.
Dirty Dick Russell.
Yes. And Ellsworth's claim that Mason was mistaken for Oswald is pertinent. If Mason was a provocative man at the Sports Drome rifle range, then he was certainly getting noticed. And if he was at Sylvia Odio's apartment, the evidence does not look good as far as Mason's innocence goes. So one of the things that has been thrown around is that Mason could have been the guy at Sylvia Odio's because they're offering arms to Sylvia Odio of connections to Jure. And maybe Sylvia Odio thought Mason was Oswald, but of course then you have the whole calling her back and saying Leon Oswald and that guy's crazy. So you got to wonder what's going on here. But all right, let's go back to my PowerPoint here. So Rob, well, actually before this,
Yes.
Ellsworth had an interesting day on November 22nd. He started his day with a meeting with guess who? I know you know the answer to this.
Enlighten me, sir.
James Hosty.
Oh, yes. The FBI.
Yes. Yes. So essentially, people allege that his cover was blown during the November 20th arrest of Thomas Mason. So on the morning of September, let me get this up here. Okay, so on the morning of November 22nd, 1963, Frank Ellsworth from ATF, along with Ed Coyle of Army Intelligence, took place in a meeting at the ATF office with Jim Hosty. So you have, a few hours before the assassination, they're kind of getting together, interagency cooperation. You have Army Intelligence, you have ATF, and you have FBI. This meeting was the first time he had heard of the investigation of the thefts from Fort Hood, which I know you're going to get into. But then, somehow, Rob, this dude, Frank Ellsworth, ATF, is alleged to be the Secret Service agent on the grassy knoll. And Jim Hosty accuses him of this and says he told him, Ellsworth told Hosty, he was the agent on the grassy knoll. So, of course, I'm not really going to take Hosty's word for it per se, but he told the HSCA that. But then so after he's alleged to be on the knoll, he goes inside the Texas School Book Depository at the time the cartridges were found. And I found this from this is from Warren Commission hearings. And this is describing when they found the rifle. Lieutenant Day held up an envelope open while Sims dropped them into the envelope. Lieutenant Day then walked over to where the rifle had been found. Detective Studebaker and Lieutenant Day took pictures of the rifle. Mr. Pinkston of the FBI and the Secret Service agent who were there at the time pictures were being made. We don't know the Secret Service agent's name. Mr. Ellsworth and another officer from Alcohol Tax Department were also there. Lieutenant Day then picked up the rifle and dusted it for fingerprints. So here you have it in the Warren Commission hearings, Mr. Ellsworth present inside the TSBD during the time the rifle was found. So he goes from meeting with Hosty to possibly being on the knoll and then to inside the TSBD, which is why I made that analogy of Westbrook.
The everywhere man, yes.
Yeah. So this is just more information on Mason. I'm going to skip this for now. So he's called to give a deposition on the HSCA, and the subjects of this are ATF, Ellsworth, Frank, Leslie, FBI, methodology, Hosty, James Mason, and TSBD. But, Rob, this testimony is not available.
Well,
Not
it
a-
is. Just nobody's found it at the archives yet.
Right. So it's not available online. Allegedly, it's at the archives. And you know,
Hey, Malcolm Blunt, you missed something, sir.
yeah. But this is going to be a trend when it comes to uh, um, Ellsworth.
Yeah.
So fast forward to the AARB here, and the FBI only had jurisdiction over gun runners if their activities also violated the Neutrality Act. Otherwise, jurisdiction rested with the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms agents. ATF agent Frank Ellsworth testified in his newly released deposition that he believed Dallas to be the assembly point for weapons for the impending November invasion against Cuba. And remember, he is undercover buying weapons from right wing scafuzas, right?
Yeah. And we know people like Lawrence Howard and Lauren Hall were bringing weapons, trailer loads of weapons to Dallas in October of 63.
Right. Since ATF was monitoring the activities of such men, pertinent investigative reports of ATF should be obtained by the archives, not only as they relate to Dallas, but to Los Angeles and Miami as well. Needless to say, plans for an invasion of Cuba at the end of November, if true, cast the assassination of President Kennedy in a different light. So Ellsworth is saying a lot of people are stocking up on weapons for an invasion of Cuba from Dallas, which is interesting because you think maybe if Kennedy's shot, after Kennedy's shot, that's where you can kind of start your revolution. I don't know exactly what their plan was. I'm trying to make sense of it.
I think they were the Kennedy getting killed at that time kind of screwed their plans up. Like that wasn't part of the plan. Like, maybe they were planning something, an invasion at the end of November, and when Kennedy got killed, that kind of screwed everything up for him. Maybe. I don't know. It all depends on who you figure was planning this. I mean, Dallas is not the most strategic place to launch an invasion from, considering it's
Of course.
significantly landlocked.
Right.
But
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. So the reason this is so murky is you have undercover federal agents infiltrating right-wing gun runners who are selling arms to anti-Castro groups and FBI and everyone else kind of involved. So it's really a fascinating situation here, and it even gets better. The portions. This is remember from our conversation with Andrew Eiler. This is one of the earlier AARB. This is a public hearing. There are portions of newly released Ellsworth documents, released to them, not to us, that remain redacted. These documents should be released in their entirety to better understand what was happening in Dallas in the fall of 1963 and to identify the foundation for Ellsworth's professional opinion that Dallas was the assembly point for weapons to be used in an invasion. The Ellsworth-Mason documents also focus attention on some nefarious activities of Army ordnance officers. An examination of the Whittier-Miller trial transcripts clearly point to help from the, quote, inside in the theft of weapons from military installations. While this may prove embarrassing to the military, it is not justification for withholding the documents. So keep this date in mind, October 1994. They're trying to get these documents. And 2 years later, in April 1996, guess what? They're still trying to get these documents. On several occasions, official investigations of the assassination of President Kennedy contacted Frank Ellsworth, an agent for the ATF. In April 64, a Warren Commission staff member interviewed Mr. Ellsworth regarding gun running and other possible activities of anti-Castro and right-wing groups in the Dallas area. See Warren Commission memorandum from Burt Griffin to W. David Slauson, dated April 16, 64. So they have evidence that this interview happened. We just don't have the interview, which makes you think why. Of course.
Well, I have some kind of an interview, Joe.
Okay.
It's hella off the record for sure. But I did find something. Let me see here. It's a memorandum to David Slauson from Burt Griffin on April 16th, 1964.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's an interview with Agent Frank Ellsworth.
Okay, great. That's
And here's what it says. It's not long. It's less than a page. So
sure.
Special Agent William Patterson and I spoke with Agent Ellsworth in his home in Dallas, Texas. Ellsworth has finished law school for investigating gun sales for the Treasury Department in Dallas, Fort Worth during the last 4.5 years. He stated that he was more familiar with traffic in arms in that area than any other agent of the government outside of the FBI. Most of this interview was totally uninformative. However, I believe we learned 3 things of value. Only 3, Joe. Number 1 is at the time of the assassination of the president, there was almost no information available to the government concerning the activities of Dallas Cubans and other groups in illegal armaments. So basically what they're saying is the government had no information regarding the activities of Dallas anti-Castro Cuban exiles or illegal gun running in Dallas. Number 2, an organization known as the Minutemen is the right-wing group in Dallas most likely to have been associated with any effort to assassinate the president. This is, of course, Frank Ellsworth's opinion. Number 3, the Minutemen are closely tied to General Walker and H.L. Hunt. I mean, he just blatantly throws Walker and Hunt right under the bus.
Wow.
To the Warren Commission. He says Ellsworth described in some detail his undercover efforts in procuring the arrest of a local gun shop owner, Mason, who is an ardent member of the Minutemen. As a result of these undercover activities, Ellsworth learned that Emmanuel Rodriguez, apparently a Cuban survivor of the Bay of Pigs, was attempting to purchase arms in the Dallas area for Cuban group Alpha 66. And by the way, Joe, Rodriguez is also a member of the DRE. That's what the paper says. Agent Ellsworth indicated that virtually all information gathered by the FBI with respect to right-wing anti-Castro Cuban and other so-called subversive activities was the responsibility of the FBI, in particular, Agent James Hosty. I got the impression from Ellsworth that Hosty is personally responsible for most investigative information developed in Dallas in connection with subversive activities. Ellsworth, like Agents Howlett and Patterson of the Secret Service, expressed his dislike of Agent Hosty. Each of these persons brought up Hosty's name and commented on his own without prompting from me. Sincerely, Burt Griffith. So that ain't very nice. But again, Ellsworth didn't have much to say other than to throw Hosty under the bus and pretty much say nobody really knew anything about the Cubans in Dallas or what they were doing. It was Hosty's responsibility, and there you go.
Right. It's nuts, and we've talked about like interagency conflict a lot on the show, Rob. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is one of the best examples because you have this dude's cover, Ellsworth, allegedly being blown on the Wednesday, November 20th, and then everyone gets together, right? Army intelligence, Hosty, FBI, Ellsworth, ATF, in the morning on November 22nd to try to kind of hash this all out. And then you have, of course, Hosty saying, Ellsworth told me he was on the knoll. And it's very likely he could have been on the knoll because he found his way into the TSPD. I showed that document of the Warren Commission earlier. So,
yeah, now I tried, Joe. I don't know if you were able to to find, but I could not find a picture of Frank Ellsworth anywhere. I had to put the badge on the damn. I wanted to put him on the cover photo for this, thumbnail for this episode, but I couldn't find a picture of him.
I couldn't either, and I read some stuff. I think it was on like Dealey Plaza Echo of people trying to find a picture, but they were all redacted, or the picture of him is not available. So you have to ask why. Why is this picture not available? Why is his HSCA deposition not available? Why is whatever he talked to Burt Griffith of the Warren Commission off the record not available? What are they hiding here? I don't know. It's very sus.
Very.
Let me just bring this up.
Because he was doing undercover work? I don't know.
But that's like the logical explanation. But like I read in that AARB letter, it still doesn't, at this point, warrant those records still being, withheld.
But if he's doing undercover work, he's not the ATF person that's meeting with the FBI and Hosty and this and that. I mean, you can't do it all, for Christ's sake,
Right. No, but you have him buying guns from some Army guy that you'll get into, the Army Ordnance guy. There's a lot of shady shit going on here, and I just want to bring up this last thing here, which is the HSCA on assassinations, HSCA final report. The committee made an effort to identify the person who talked to Patrolman Smith. Patrolman Smith was a DPD cop who said someone flashed Secret Service credentials. FBI agent James Hosty stated that Frank Ellsworth, then an agent for ATF, Bureau of the Treasury Department, had indicated that he had been in the Grassy Knoll area and for some reason had identified himself to someone as a Secret Service agent. The committee deposed Ellsworth, who denied Hosty's allegation. So, they're pointing the finger at each other, and I really don't know what to make of it. But the fact that all of these documents are missing on Ellsworth, his deposition, what he talked about with Burt Griffin, and I showed you the ARB's trying to get this. They can't. And before I end, Rob, want to read something really quickly from what Bill Simpich said on the Education Forum less than a year ago, or exactly a year ago. The Ellsworth story is a black hole. Research it numerous times. I can't find any written report of the ATTU, the ATF, or anyone else finding the rifle on the fourth floor. But of course, Dallas Detective Sims said that Ellsworth was on the sixth floor when the cartridges were found, which, of course, I showed you the Warren Commission document that mentioned Ellsworth, the only time it does. Ellsworth reported that John Thomas Mason, a new elite group of patriots arming themselves for defense of the country. Jim Hosty's Minuteman source, that's not relevant. Well, why don't we have the documents showing that Ellsworth was interviewed in any proper way before or after Dick Russell? There's a small mountain of documents on him at the archives, almost none on Mary Farrell. And I've been going nuts trying to find these.
Lucky to find the one, the literal one page.
I couldn't even find that. That's
and this was done at the dude's house by Slauson in April '64. I mean, he didn't even go before the commission. They went to his house.
Right. Also, Hosty's testimony to the HSCA that Ellsworth was the one who identified him as a Secret Service agent on the Grassy Knoll is also I couldn't find. So why is these documents about Ellsworth not on Mary Farrell? Why do you have to go to the archives to view them? And the only reason I could think of is that there's something to hide via Ellsworth. And there was allegedly 7 to 8 ATF agents inside the TSBD after the assassination, according to Mary Farrell and Peter Dale Scott, who we talked about on Members Only. That was like the critics conference. But we know Carl Booth, another ATF agent, was in there as well. But it's nuts when you think about James Powell of Army Intelligence as well. There's a lot of things going on there at once. So that is all I have on Ellsworth.
Cool deal. Thank you, Joseph.
Yeah, I haven't. Let me check in on some comments. I haven't seen the chat in a while.
So what kind of spurned this whole vein of the investigation, Joe, was when this book here came out in 1996 called Oswald Talked, The New Evidence in the JFK Assassination by Ray and Mary LaFontaine. And in it are some stories and information that had never been seen or heard from before, including the focus on the Whittier and Miller incident with the FBI, the Hosty stuff, and of course the revelation that there was a fourth person, Tramp, arrested in the railroad yard that day and in jail at the same time as Oswald, who happened to definitely run into Whittier and Miller while in jail. The interesting thing, I pulled this off the shelf, Joe.
Yeah.
And I saw that there's a bookmark in here, right?
Okay, I see it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what the hell is? Because I have not cracked this book in a very long time. So I was looking at it, and it's a GameStop receipt.
Yeah.
From July 19th, 2014, 11 years ago. Can you guess what video games I purchased on July 19th, 2014?
Okay. Something regarding WWE.
No.
No?
Well, these were purchased for my kid. So
Grand Theft Auto.
No, I purchased Titanfall for the Xbox 360 for $32. It was pre-owned. And a Plants vs. Zombies Garden War for the Nintendo DS for $30. And I reserved Call of Duty Advanced Warfare for $5 at the time. Crazy.
Wow, $4. Wow.
A long time ago, 11 years ago. Yeah. Brings back memories.
I like it. I respect it. But it wasn't bookmarking a certain passage or something.
No.
It was just in there.
Yeah, I may have been using it at the time for a bookmark, and then just who knows.
Yeah. Yeah. And Timothy Ryan, why the fuck was Ellsworth even there? Possibly on the Knoll and definitely in the TSBD. I have no idea. I have no idea how they would get there that quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it's who knows?
Yeah.
Why was he there?
Whittier-Miller docs, Mr. Dave Sparks says, hey, bud, still being withheld per the NSA. Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know what's going on here. I just really don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, so the story goes November 19th, 1963. This is 4 days before the assassination. There's an article in the Dallas Morning News that says an 80-mile-an-hour police chase ended in the capture of two ex-convicts hauling a load of stolen machine guns in a swank sports car at 6:40 p.m. Monday at Gadsden and Hall. I guess it's the intersection. Nabbed were Lawrence Reginald Miller, who gave police his address as Route 4 in Canton, and Donnell Darius Whitter, age 43, a 5-time loser, who listed his address as 328 South Edgefield.
5-time loser because he got arrested 5 times?
Yes.
Okay.
Man. Miller received deep facial cuts when the black 1962 sports car crashed into a utility pole, and he went crashing through the windshield face first. Poor bastard.
He survived, though, I think, right?
Oh, yeah. Just a little worse for the wear. In the
Oof.
car, police found 2 air-cooled 30 caliber machine guns, a 45 caliber grease gun, submachine gun, and 2 Browning automatic rifles. The weapons were identified as part of the loot from the Wednesday burglary of the Texas National Guard armor shop at Terrell, Texas. The chase started by patrolman J.B. Allen and J.R. Sales when they saw the northbound car run a red light on Hall at the intersection of Allen. When they tried to stop the car, it roared north at speeds of up to 80 miles an hour, and 5 blocks away at Hall and Junius, the contraband-laden convertible plunged between 2 autos halted at a red light. It sideswiped both and squealed on toward Gaston. There, the outlaw's car crashed head-on into a utility pole. Sales said Whitter scrambled from behind the steering wheel and ran 30 feet on foot before Sales tackled him. Miller, his face hacked by glass when his head plunged through the windshield, remained in the car. He was treated at Parkland Hospital emergency room, then jailed, along with Whitter for burglary. Whitter was taken to the Parkland under guard when he claimed that he was feeling ill. Allen and Sales found the stolen guns piled on the back floorboards, covered by a layer of pop bottles, cum rags, and a gas-heated stove. I found this interesting document, Joe, from the city of Dallas Police Department.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a letter from M.W. Stevenson, who was the deputy chief commanding of the Criminal Investigation Division, CID, to the Honorable Wagoner Carr, the Attorney General of the state of Texas. And this was on April 17th, 64. Dear Sir, several days ago, I was contacted by Vincent Drain of the FBI regarding a check of garages and service stations patronized by Jack Ruby. On April 5th, Lieutenant Cunningham contacted 4 such places. From papers that were found in Ruby's car, indicated that he might have patronized. Donnell Whittier, named in the enclosed report, formerly worked at the Texaco service station at Clarendon and Ewing. He serviced Ruby's car when he came into the station several times. As you will recall, Whittier was arrested by officers of this department on November 18, 63, at which time 2 machine guns, 2 Browning automatic rifles were recovered, which had been taken in a burglary of the National Guard headquarters at Terrell, Texas. According to our records, he was convicted in federal court and is now serving time for the offense.
Rob, can I stop you for a sec?
Must.
I found something I thought might enhance what you just said, and that is the video. It's only 50 seconds long of Jack Ruby's mechanic, Donnell Whittier, arrested, and it shows the guns. Now, there's some background music. I'm going to mute it, but with your permission, Rob, I would like to play it since you just read about
Go ahead,
that
Joe.
with the November 18th arrest here. So let me. It's crazy. I can't believe I found this, and this is from the site we've played a couple times. Helmer Reenberg, who has a ton of great JFK videos that you can't find anywhere else. Helmer Reenberg. So let's, being muted, I guess you can give your commentary. This is Whittier and then at the end, the guns. Look at him in the cell. Oh, hi.
I got me on camera now, do you? You sons of bitches. That's all right.
And I highlighted a couple comments when you were reading. They were like, those are serious guns. They could only have came from a military base type of thing. So
I swear I ain't got nothing on me, sir. You can search me.
And look at that. Look at that, Rob.
Yeah, that's
No.
some serious tools, man.
Whoa. Oof. So, and it's kind of cool. I found this video randomly, and I figured it would fit in at some point. Oh, wow, look at that.
Yeah, there's air-cooled barrels. Yeah, man.
Yeah, for the audio audience, it's like 50 cals, bars and heavy-duty machine guns, like not AR-15 types, like heavy-duty. And
Can you imagine with them being in the car and they see the cops start to chase them, and they look at each other and they're like, "Should we run? Should I get in the back seat and start shooting this shit at him?"
The 50 cal. Yeah.
I mean, you imagine leaning out the window and him just opening fire with one of the things on. They might have got away.
They might have, instead of his face going through the windshield. But look at the cops; they're like admiring this, and there's only 2 seconds left.
Yeah, that was probably their biggest bust ever.
So that is crazy. So these crazy stuff there. So I didn't want to interrupt, but I wanted to play that.
Yeah, no worries. So, and then I found a letter to Jesse Curry, the chief of police, regarding papers found in Jack Ruby's car. This is from Lieutenant Cunningham of the Forgery Bureau. And he says that Donnell Whittier worked at Morelli's service station and took care of Ruby's work for him.
Morelli's?
Morelli.
I like it.
Morelli states that he does not know if they were friends or had relations other than that of customer and station attendant or not. Whittier was arrested November 18th for burglary of National Guard Armory. I understand that he has been convicted of this burglary in federal court. Now, whether or not these two scafoos actually did the burglary, we don't know. But they definitely had stolen property, that's for sure, in their car. Which brings us, Joe, to an interesting little-known figure named John Franklin Elrod, who, along with the LaFontaines, finding the 3 arrest reports of the Tramps and their true identities, happened to find the arrest report of another man arrested on November 22nd, 1963, by the name of John Franklin Elrod. Now,
right. Hence the nickname, the Fourth Tramp.
Right. Yeah. According to his arrest report, he was arrested, like I said, on 11/22/63 at 2:45 p.m. So this is about the time that they're bringing. Well, Oswald would have already been back at the station by then.
Yeah.
So
a little after the Texas Theater. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He gave his address as 3314 Knight Street, age 31. And the charge is investigation of murder and vagrancy, criminal vagrancy. The location of the offense, 400 block of Elm Street. Okay. Type premises where arrested, railroad tracks. Okay. So he's right there in the middle of the shit.
Right.
It says this man was arrested on railroad tracks a few minutes after a radio call was dispatched that said a man was walking along the railroad carrying a rifle. This man was not carrying a rifle at the time of his arrest, but we arrested him anyway. This suspect is unemployed, states he has been in Dallas for 2 weeks, lost his job last week at the El Phoenix, states that he has been arrested for theft and DUI in the past. The arresting officer was Barnhart and Hart and Rhodes and no, I don't even know how to say this name. Helen Hansen, maybe? I don't know. But in the handwritten at the very bottom, it says good, gone, which is weird.
Good, gone.
Yeah. It's at the very bottom in handwritten, it just says good and it's underlined and then gone. And it's I know it's backwards, but it's weird.
Huh.
Very weird.
That is very weird, yes.
Now, of course, at the time, this didn't get out. This wasn't in the news. This wasn't reported. Elrod was just lost to history at that point, right? Until, Joe, August 11th of 1964. Now, this is, of course, shortly, like a month before the Warren report was published. Okay. This Scafuza goes wandering into the Shelby County, Tennessee jail on August 11th, 1964 in Tennessee. Okay. And this is an FBI report. Elrod currently lives in Memphis and has been staying at the Harbor House in Memphis prior to the time of his arrest, for which he was placed in jail on August 11th, 1964. The Harbor House at 1369 Court Avenue is a home for alcoholics, Joe.
Yes, I read he was a alcoholic.
He may have liked to imbibe a little bit.
Yeah.
And Elrod stated that he himself is an alcoholic. Elrod came to the Shelby County Sheriff's Office during the early morning hours of August 11th after having consumed a lot of beer and vodka. He was at that time in possession of a sawed-off 12-gauge shotgun with a pistol grip pump. He stated that he had begun to think of the possibilities of killing his wife, from which he is now separated. Insomuch as he had the sawed-off shotgun and the desire to kill her was known to him, he decided that he should come to the sheriff's office and talk and turn himself in, which he did. So he's drunk. He's scared he's going to do something. He's got the gun. He's got the distaste in his heart, Joe. He's got the evil in his heart.
All right.
And he don't trust himself. He needs to go talk to the sheriff. Okay.
Weird.
He further advised, because now, loose lips sink ships, because, he's somewhat inebriated and, he's already admitted to wanting to kill his wife with a shotgun. So why not keep talking? He further advised that he had been somewhat troubled by events that occurred immediately following the assassination of President John F. Kennedy at Dallas, Texas on November 11th, 1963. Shortly after the assassination of the president, Elrod, who had been about 2.5 miles from the scene of the assassination at Lemon and Oaklawn, was arrested by the Dallas Police Department and placed in the city jail. Now, he says he was 2.5 miles away from Dealey Plaza, but the arrest report clearly says he was in the 400 block of Elm Street at the railroad yards when he was arrested.
Right. Yeah.
So there's that. Right. He says his arrest had nothing to do with the assassination, and he knew nothing concerning the assassination. And at the city jail in Dallas, he was placed in a cell 10 to be more exact, on the 5th floor. And at that time, his cellmate was a man whose identity he could not recall. An individual, Joe, whose face was smashed up. This had to be Lawrence Miller.
Right.
Was brought into the hallway of the jail where Elrod and his cellmate could observe him. Now, at that time, the unknown cellmate made some mention that he had known this man with the injured face as a result of meeting him at a hotel. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The cellmate stated that 5 men had met at a motel and they had been advanced some money under some type of contract. One of these men was reported to have received at the time $5,000, which is a lot of money in 1963.
Yeah.
The man with the injured face had received the money, and he was reported to have been driving a Thunderbird automobile with a large quantity of guns contained therein. Elrod advised he was confined in the Dallas City jail for a period of 72 hours, and he was confused at this time concerning the events which occurred. He stated he could not recall whether Jack Ruby's name had been mentioned prior to the time of the killing of Oswald, but this cellmate at the time had told him that one of the men who had been at the motel referred to above, name and location unknown, had been Jack Ruby. This was all the information which Elrod could recall. He stated that on several occasions he has had difficulty remembering due to his extreme use of alcohol. He knew nothing concerning the assassination of the president, the involvement of Jack Ruby in the killing of Oswald, or of any information concerning the possibility of the receipt of money by Jack Ruby, except the hearsay information he had received from his unknown cellmate. Okay?
Yep.
Now, this report was given by the FBI to the Warren Commission, and they did nothing with it, Joe. Nothing. They did not investigate any further.
I wish I could say that shocks me.
Despite the information in the FBI report that I just read you, they figured,
Nothing to see here.
nothing to see here. Just some crazy alcoholic, right?
Right.
Now, they have John Franklin Elrod's arrest record. It seems to be he was born in 1932. He was first arrested in 1961, which means he was almost 30 years old before the first time he was arrested. So not necessarily a career criminal at this point.
Right.
And this first arrest was only for DWI and INV, violation of the state barb law, involuntary violation of the state barb law. What is that? Barbiturates?
I have no idea. How do you
Yep.
spell it?
BARB? Barb? I imagine it's short for barbiturates. Maybe
Yeah.
he might have had some pills on him or something. Who knows?
It's a good guess.
But this was in May of 1961 in Dallas. He was arrested again on Valentine's Day, 1962. Another DUI. Spent 3 days in jail. November 15th, 1962. T/over. No build GJ. I don't know what that charge is for. And then he was again arrested in Quitman, Texas on March 19th, 1963 for simple assault. And when he walked into the sheriff's department in Memphis, he was arrested for investigating a homicide, hold for the federal authorities. So based on what he told the locals about the Kennedy thing, they held him so the FBI could come talk to him.
Right. The barb charge seems to come from Barbara Galindo versus the state of Texas, and then you're right, it does have to do with opiate possession. So,
Damn, I'm good.
yeah, you're good.
Now, On August 11th, we have a sergeant of the Bureau of Identification writing a letter, Joe, personal letter, on Shelby County, Memphis, Tennessee letterhead that says, "Drive carefully today, make it to work tomorrow." August 11th, 1964, Mr. J. Edgar Hoover, Director of the FBI. Dear Sir, please have the enclosed prints searched through your files to ascertain if the above captioned subject, John Franklin Elrod, has a criminal record or is wanted by any law enforcement agency. This subject walked into our office at approximately 12:30 a.m. on this date and stated that he had information concerning the murder of Lee. He had with him a shotgun. The local office of the FBI has been informed of this subject and stated they would conduct an investigation. Please wire reply, collect. So he wanted a call back from Hoover. You know, God forbid the government pays for a phone call. You can call me collect. There, J. Edgar. Which he apparently did 9 days later on August the 20th. Don't have that, though. So, you know, the authors of Oswald Talked managed to track down Elrod in the 90s. And as part of their book promotion, they recorded this guy and in video interview form and sold it to Inside Edition? Not 100% sure on that. This is one of those tabloid news shows.
Yeah.
You know, when this book came out, dude, in 96, it was either loved or hated by the critics. I told you about the Harold Weisberg letter to Jefferson Morley, where he ripped him a new asshole for praising this book. Well, I just noticed on the back cover is a blurb by Jefferson Morley of the Washington Post.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It says it's a fresh, funny, and factual husband and wife reporting team dive into the madness of the Kennedy assassination debate and emerge, sanity intact, with an unprecedented and richly detailed portrait of the militant anti-communist underground of Dallas in 1962 and 63. Fascinating new evidence, a military ID card Oswald was not supposed to have, the termination of a mysterious CIA operation called Amspell on the eve of the president's murder, and a revelation by Oswald's cellmate that the FBI suppressed. So, even though Elrod didn't come right out and say who his cellmate was, in 1964, apparently he remembered in the 90s that his cellmate was none other than Lee Harvey Oswald. Despite the fact that the Dallas police said Oswald was always in a cell alone.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe he was for a short time, you know, who knows? We'll never know. But there is, it's hard copy. There is an interview, of course, on YouTube. You can track it down, of John Elrod on hard copy, where you can hear him talking about this very thing. You can also hear an interview that they did with John Elrod's brother. Like, apparently this Elrod dude like lives in the middle of nowhere on an island in the middle of a river, Joe. So ain't nobody sneaking up on this motherfucker. Okay. You better be able to row your boat.
And be armed.
Yeah. And, you know, his brother swears up and down, you know, that he knows his brother and he wouldn't lie about this stuff. And he's telling the truth. Now come to find out, the car that they did wreck was a Thunderbird. So interestingly enough, Elrod did have correct information in 1964 about this incident. And he says his cellmate told him that he was at a meeting at a motel the night before with 5 other people, including Jack Ruby. Now, we know Marita Lorenz is the only other one that tells about a meeting at a hotel the night before the assassination at which Jack Ruby was present.
That popped into my head, sir.
Yeah, including E. Howard Hunt, Frank Sturgis, and apparently these guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, if you were going to ambush, could you imagine these guys popping out of the grassy knoll with those guns firing at Kennedy? Good Lord. They just mowed him down.
Yeah.
So was this some kind of a foiled plot? And they had to kind of,
Deep six it, almost.
Go to plan B or something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't know what this means. It's hella interesting. It says, after having his face stitched up, Miller was remanded to the Dallas City jail. All the while, Frank Ellsworth waited, not knowing the FBI agent or the Dallas police had intercepted the weapons that were intended for him. The ATF agent then went to bed. The next morning, Ellsworth went to Mason's gun shop to find out what happened. So apparently, Whittier and Miller were on their way to meet Frank Ellsworth to sell him these guns when this happened.
Yeah. I mean, he's undercover buying from a lot of different people. It's crazy.
Yeah, and these gunrunners just happen to know Jack Ruby. And then you have Elrod in 1964, mind you, saying this shit, the exact same thing. Crazy town.
Yeah, and Rob, I want to bring up something I read, and I can't remember where in the last day or two, but some people think that Elrod might have actually saw John Thomas Mason, right? The guy I showed you before, who Ellsworth was investigating and arrested on November 20th. That Elrod could have mistaken Mason for Oswald because they were in jail at the same time. It's possible, and I mean, who knows? But that's what I read.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point. He could have thought it was Lee Oswald, but it just kind of looked like
Especially, wasn't he? He said he was on vodka and beer. Was that day, the 22nd?
Yeah, because if Mason is a gun runner, and people or gun runners bring him guns to fix, to make fully automatic or whatever the case may be, he would know for sure Whittier and Miller. There was only so many dirty gun dealers in Dallas, I'm sure, that would do this kind of work, like under the table.
World, yeah. You would know everyone, as just like everyone knew Jack Ruby.
So yeah, that is a good point, Joe. Yeah. Good point. And the last thing I got here, Joe, is actually an ARRB memorandum from a Joan Zimmerman, and the subject is leads from Ray and Mary LaFontaine. Oswald talked. And she basically goes through here and throws out a bunch of things apparently that was in this LaFontaine book. Some of which, of course, are interesting. The claim is John Martino was jailed in Cuba with Sylvia Odio's father. Did you hear that before? Yeah. So that's interesting. The FBI was apparently aware of gun running and thefts from National Guard armories. The CIA was backing and then withdrawing support from the DRE and Alpha 66. Part of the FBI's intention in following the guns was to try to figure out what the CIA was doing. The ATF agent Frank Ellsworth had much less knowledge of the Cuban side of the picture. and he seemed to be focusing only on the thefts of the weapons. The Secret Service did not seem to be aware of the Texas-Florida-Cuba gun-running angle in its full dimensions until the agency started its investigation after the assassination. So you can kind of see where this kind of thing started. Okay, the FBI report, which I read just briefly from August the 11th concerning Elrod, and the letter that Sergeant Gillis had wrote to Hoover directly. And this is what Hoover's response was. Hoover responded to Sergeant Gillis that Elrod had not been held in Dallas while Oswald was in jail. DPD records show that Elrod was in the Dallas jail at the same time Oswald was there. So Hoover blatantly lied to the Memphis PD. Blatantly lied.
What's the Memphis PD going to do to Hoover, you know?
Yeah, and who knows if the Dallas PD even made the FBI aware of Elrod's arrest. Who knows? One would think that the FBI would know who was arrested for the possible murder investigation of the president on November 22nd, that they would be aware of all of them. But maybe they weren't, because nobody had ever turned up the Tramp documents before, the late 80s.
That's a good point. And especially if they marked it irrelevant to the assassination, right? It wouldn't come up on their radar in theory.
So again, later in the 90s, Elrod stated that Oswald, his cellmate, claimed to be in the same motel room when Ruby paid for weapons. Lawrence Miller, identified by Oswald, according to Elrod, while in the Dallas jail, said that he was in the same motel room and was one of Ruby's personal gun runners. The LaFontaines claimed that other Ruby associates included Donnell Whittier, who was arrested with Miller, who serviced Ruby's car, and Elvis Dalrymple, a Perry Wydell, and a Marvin Frazier. Elrod's comments, if true, both link Ruby and Oswald before the assassination and connect two seemingly unrelated events: an arrest for gun running and the assassination of President Kennedy. The LaFontaines claim that Oswald was the informant who tipped the FBI off on November 16th about the gun exchange that was to take place on November 18th. So now the LaFontaines are saying that Oswald was the informant who tipped off, I guess, the local PD or the FBI or whoever, that the gun sale to Frank Ellsworth was going to take place.
I have heard that, Rob, and I heard another theory, and I'm just going to throw it out there, that the Oswald note to Hosty, if that's true, and he was informing on this, Oswald, the Oswald note to Hosty was about the gun running and not some threat to, and that makes sense to me, because you have all these different agencies doing all their different undercover operations, and then afterwards they're all trying to save face and cover their own asses. It makes sense why these things are still, a lot of these documents are still not released today, right?
Yeah. Now there's a lot of shit going on in Dallas in October and November and in the days leading up to the assassination, in which they claim in October of 1963 at DRE meetings in Dallas, General Edwin Walker attended at least one. LHO met Sylvia Odio, who was arranging gun deals. The DRE military chief Juan Manuel Salvat, a CIA asset, and Joaquin Martinez de Pinillos also attended these meetings. Salvat was never asked if he saw Oswald. October 25th, Hosty learned of Cuban invasion planned for the last week of November 1963. October 31st, 1963, a George Nante, a John T. Mason, and George Perrell, alias, meet at Mason's gun shop. On November 1st, Oswald met with Hosty. Hosty received an airtel from San Antonio regarding John Thomas Mason and Perrell. Same day, Oswald opened a P.O. box as A. Heidel in Dallas. November 8th, 1963, CIA decides to withdraw support from the DRE. Announced the DRE on November 19th in 1963. DRE already knew in parentheses. November 12th, like you just said, Joe, the Hosty note that may have been information and not a threat. The following day, November 13th, the theft of heavy weapons from the National Guard Armory in Terrell. The guns originally came from Fort Hood in Killeen, Texas. November 16th, Oswald met with Hosty in person in Dallas. November 17th, a teletype from FBI headquarters to Mobile, Dallas, New Orleans, and Memphis field offices warning of an assassination attempt on President Kennedy to take place November 22nd or 23rd. November 18th, FBI agent Joe Abernathy participates in an arrest with DPD, two Cuban gun runners, or two alleged gun runners, Lawrence Miller and Donnell Whittier in Dallas. ATF Frank Ellsworth, who had set up his own sting to capture Mason, was not previously informed. November 21st, Jack Revel of DPD, Ed Coyle of the 112th Military Intelligence Group, and Hosty meet. November 22nd, 11 a.m., ATF agent Ellsworth, Hosty, and Coyle meet again to discuss gun running. After the assassination, Coyle was sent to Korea, where reporters could not contact him.
That is interesting. That is interesting.
So, like I said, Joe, I mean, there's stuff, there's rabbit holes you can go down. I believe Mason was also investigated as a source for Mannlicher Carcano ammunition. There was only so many places you could buy Mannlicher Carcano bullets in Dallas, and Oswald had to get them from somewhere. He surely didn't mail order them. Also, the ATF was investigating Seaport traders at the time. Oswald supposedly ordered his handgun from them, so it's highly unlikely that they wouldn't have known about this transaction. Let's see.
I just want to thank, bro, the Double B. Do you know what he just did? And you're going to love this. He just gifted 10 memberships.
Holy shite.
Guess who got one of those memberships?
You did.
You can't make it up. As well as Rocket Queen Colleen, Wilt 333, South to West, Cammy, Umbrella Man, Harvey Runnels, Kevin Hardy, Turin Horse, and the Reactor Kid. But Rob, my chat is not working on the side of our studio, which is why I refreshed for a second. And people are like, YouTube doesn't like Joe. Stop fiddling, Joseph. But that's what I was trying to do to highlight that comment. So I don't know if your chat is working, but of course we want to.
I have no clue. I've been reading, so I don't know what's going on. The last chat message I'm seeing is from Tiny.
Sex.
It says sex wives.
They're on a tangent there. I saw that, but that is mine too. So our chat stopped working. So I actually have it up on my phone, Rob, and that's how I figured. That's how I figured it out.
Sorry we didn't see.
So thank you so much, the Double B. You are the GOAT. We appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Double B. So, I recommend, if you want to know more about this whole story, check out Oswald Talked. Yeah. These folks were attacked. This husband and wife team were attacked heavily when this book came out. So much so that this was the only thing they did regarding the assassination. And then they dropped off the face of the earth because of the backlash that they faced, despite years and years and years of research. They were pretty much smacked in the face by both conspiracy people and lone nutters. And they were like, all right, you don't appreciate us? See you later.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah, no, I ran into some of those articles, some that liked some of it, some that tore it apart. definitely interesting. I have not read that book, and
Weisberg, definitely not a fan.
Morley is Morley approved. It's on the back.
But, as far as books from the 90s, that you can recommend with actual new evidence in it, this is one.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Newman's Oswald and the CIA. This one, I mean, did Harvey and Lee come out in the 90s, or was that early 2000s?
Yeah,
I don't know. I want to say it was the 90s, but I don't know.
I don't want to be wrong.
I mean, it was being researched in the 90s for sure. But yeah, if you can find this book, check it out. It's a thickie.
Yeah.
Definitely worth the money. Apparently, Joe, I got it on Amazon, as there's an Amazon sticker on the back, but I have no idea what I paid for it. I obviously bought it prior to 2014, hence the GameStop.
Right. You were able to date it, to date the purchase. I like it.
Yeah, sometime before 2014,
but man, it's so crazy. There's something going on with this gun running story, and Ellsworth and other ATF agents being on the knoll, meeting with Hosty in the morning, disagreeing about being on the knoll, being in the TSBD at the time the shells were put in the envelope. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why these documents or these depositions with Ellsworth aren't released.
Was Ellsworth captured in the Tom Aaliyah film? I don't know.
I mean, we don't have his picture, so we can never know.
It might be in the film,
right? He probably is, and maybe that's a reason his picture has been. I heard people were like trying to get it, and they couldn't get it. And you would think someone like that would have a picture. I mean, granted, he's undercover, but his cover was blown on November 20th.
Right.
So there wasn't any need for it after that. But you gotta wonder, man. You really do. This has really piqued my curiosity and might warrant some further research by us.
Well, there's always next Wednesday, Joe.
Oh.
We will see.
Yeah.
But yeah, folks, we told you we're going to try to keep it a little shorter this evening, and we went a little longer than we wanted to. Try something out here. If it works, it works. If it don't, it don't. It is what it is.
Yes.
But we're going to try.
Perpetual Concepts, $10 super chat. Lone Gunman. I'm reading this from my phone. Lone Gunman, I'll keep you gun running. Doobie Bros. Might win comment of the night. Thank you, Perpetual Concepts. I really appreciate it.
Hell yeah. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you. As always. Yeah, thanks, folks, for hanging out with us tonight. Joe, grab the damn K9 and let's get up out of here, sir.
Ruby.
Hanging, can't see what you're saying right now, but holy. Ruby!
Oh.
The greatest lies are told in the name of truth. The greatest crimes are committed in the name of justice. The quotation is Jim Garrison's. It could be used for him or against him in this strange case. Good night.
And we'll see you, members only, Wednesday night.
We have some
link in the description if you're not already a member.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you soon. We have some fun things on the horizon.
We do. Apparently.
Allegedly.